The word was arbitrage. You were 19, sitting at a table with your cousin's friends, all finance guys, all 2 or 3 years older, all using words like weapons. Someone said arbitrage, and you nodded like you'd heard it 1,000 times. You'd never heard it once. You went to the bathroom and typed it into your phone, stood in that bathroom for 90 seconds reading the definition twice, walked back out, sat down, kept nodding. Nobody noticed. That was 12 years ago. You still remember the bathroom. You still remember the specific tile pattern on the wall because you were staring at it while learning a word everyone else already knew. That moment should have been forgettable. It wasn't, because it was the first time you became aware of a pattern that would define your entire life. The pattern is simple. You walk into a room. Everyone in that room knows something you don't. Not one thing, many things, foundational things. The kind of things where asking would expose the fact that you've been lost for the past 5 minutes, and the nod you gave 30 seconds ago was a performance. So you do what you've always done. You stay quiet, you watch, you absorb, and later, alone, you go home and you learn the thing they already knew. Not because someone assigned it to you, because your brain refuses to let the gap exist without trying to close it. You've been doing this since you were 14. 8th grade. Your school runs a math competition. Your teacher puts your name on the list. Not because you're exceptional, because 3 kids dropped out and they needed a 4th body to fill the team. You know this because you overheard her say it to another teacher in the hallway. Exact words. Doesn't matter, we just need 4. You sit in that competition next to a kid named Arjun, who finishes problems before you've read the question. Not metaphorically. The proctor says begin, and you're still finding the first question on the page, and Arjun's pencil is already moving on the second one. You solve 11 out of 30. Arjun solves 27. You place nowhere. Arjun takes first in the district. On the bus ride home, you feel something that doesn't have a clean name. Not embarrassment, not jealousy. It's the specific loneliness of realizing that your ceiling might be someone else's starting point. But here's what also happens on that bus, and you won't register this for years. You go home that night and look up 3 of the problems you couldn't solve. Nobody told you to. Nobody assigned it. Your brain simply couldn't accept that Arjun saw something you couldn't. You wanted to see it too. You didn't learn math that night. You learned something more important. You learned how to be pulled forward by someone better than you. You just didn't have language for it. Psychologists do. They call it productive struggle. The original research shows that your prefrontal cortex activates differently when you're reaching for something just beyond your ability versus cruising through something comfortable. When you're comfortable, your brain runs on pattern recognition. Efficient, fast, almost no growth. When you're struggling, when the answer is just out of reach and your brain has to stretch for it, that's when neural pathways are actually being built. That night staring at those 3 problems, your brain wasn't failing. It was constructing. You felt dumb. Your brain was doing the most important work it had done all year. Fast forward, you're 22. First real job. The company has 40 people, and you are the most junior person in the building by a margin that feels biological. The next youngest person is 29 and has been doing this for 6 years. Every conversation is a language you're translating in real time. Every meeting is a room where people are already 3 moves ahead and you're still setting up the board.
Your manager gives you a project the rest of the team considers basic. You spend 4 days on something a senior person would finish in 1 afternoon. You ask 14 questions in a single week. You know it's 14 because your manager made a joke about it on Friday. You've used up your question quota for the month. Everyone laughed. You laughed too. 3 hours later, you sat in your car for 7 minutes before driving home, staring at the steering wheel the same way you once stared at bathroom tiles. Here's what you don't see. You don't see that your manager told the director that same week that you ask better questions than people who've been there 3 years. Not more questions, better ones. The compliment never reaches you. What reaches you is the car and the 7 minutes and the familiar feeling that you are drowning in a room full of people who were born knowing how to breathe underwater. But you don't quit. You keep asking. And by month 5, something shifts. The questions change. They get sharper, shorter, more precise. Not because you suddenly became smarter, because every time you sat in a meeting not understanding, every time you asked something that felt stupid, every time you went home and Googled what everyone else already knew, your brain was running a pattern recognition engine in the background that you never consciously built. It was cataloging, connecting, mapping the distance between what you knew and what the room knew, and then, quietly, without telling you, closing that distance. Researchers call this the spacing effect, combined with retrieval practice. Your brain doesn't learn when information enters it. Your brain learns when it struggles to pull information back out. Every moment you spent reaching for a concept you couldn't quite grasp was a repetition, invisible, uncomfortable, and more valuable than any course or book or tutorial you could have taken.
You were training the entire time. You thought you were drowning. You're 26. Something happens that rearranges everything you believe about yourself. You get invited to a dinner with 8 people. Every person at that table has built something. Companies, products, careers that would take you 3 sentences to describe. You are the youngest person there, the least accomplished, the least successful by any metric that money can measure. By every rule you've internalized since that math competition, you should feel like you're back on the bus, solving 11 out of 30 while everyone else solves 27. But halfway through dinner, someone asks your opinion opinion on a problem the table has been circling for 20 minutes. Experts going back and forth. Experienced people cycling through the same 3 solutions. And you say something that makes 2 people at the table stop talking. Not because it was brilliant, because it was simple. You asked, but why does it have to work that way? The table went quiet for 4 seconds. In a regular conversation, 4 seconds is nothing. In a room full of people who've been solving problems for decades, 4 seconds is a structural event. What happened is something psychologists call the Einstein effect. When experts develop strong mental models, those models become both their greatest advantage and their biggest blind spot. Their brain automatically defaults to patterns that worked before. It stops scanning for alternatives because it already has an answer that feels right. A beginner doesn't have that default. A beginner sees the board the way it actually is, not the way experience has trained them to see it. The dumbest person in the room asked the question the room was too experienced to ask. That dinner changes how you choose rooms. You stop looking for places where you understand everything. You start deliberately putting yourself in rooms where the old feeling comes back. The silence, the nodding, the bathroom, the car, the 7 minutes. You start chasing the discomfort instead of avoiding it. Most people do the opposite. Researchers at Cornell studied this directly. When given the choice, most people place themselves in groups where they rank in the top third of ability. It feels good. Validation feels good. Knowing the answer before everyone else feels incredible. But the data shows something uncomfortable. People who consistently placed themselves at the top of their environment improved at the slowest rate over time. And the people who consistently placed themselves at the bottom, surrounded by people who were better, improved at the fastest rate. Not by a slight margin, by a significant, measurable, replicable margin. Being the dumbest person in the room is not a character flaw. It's a compression algorithm for growth. Every month you spend at the bottom of a room is worth 6 months spent at the top of a different one. You're 29. Something happens that should feel like a victory.
You walk into a meeting. You understand every word. Nobody uses a term you haven't heard. You see the answer before anyone proposes it. For the first time, you're not translating. You're not catching up. You're not running 3 seconds behind. You are the most comfortable person in that room. And for the first time in your life, comfort feels like a warning sign. Because you remember the bathroom tiles. You remember the bus after Arjun solved 27 out of 30. You remember the car and the 7 minutes after 14 questions. You remember a dinner table going silent for 4 seconds because you saw something the experts couldn't. And you realize that every single leap in your life, every real one, happened inside a room where you didn't belong. The Dunning-Kruger curve has a shape most people only know half of. The famous half is the peak of ignorance, where people with the least knowledge have the most confidence. Everyone loves quoting that part. But the other side of the curve is the one that actually matters. It's the valley. The long dip where your competence is growing, but your confidence is falling, because you're finally becoming aware of exactly how much you don't know. That valley is not a phase, it's not a bug, it's where you have been living your entire life. Not at the peak where people who know nothing feel certain, in the valley where people who are actually learning feel inadequate. That valley is the only place where growth is real. You're 31 now. You've built a career that your 14-year-old self, the one who solved 11 out of 30, would never believe belongs to you. And you still walk into rooms where you're the least qualified person present, not by accident anymore, by design. Because you learned something on a bus at 14, confirmed it in a car at 22, and proved it at a dinner table at 26. The rooms that make you feel dumb are the rooms that make you dangerous. The rooms that make you feel smart are the rooms where you quietly stop becoming anything at all. And the distance between who you are and who you could be is measured entirely by which rooms you're willing to sit in. You were never the dumbest person in the room. You were always just the only one still learning in it.